What's going on?
We're going to talk about problems today, but not your personal problems because I don't care about those, Mr. Bobby.
That's all right. All right, that's fine. I'm rocking a good farmer's tan today after motorcycle ride. You want to see? You want to see? Oh wait,
You do have a farmer's tan. We won't talk about your tattoo.
no, it's 3 hours on the bike. I'm a little sunburned, so that's okay.
You need to wear some sunscreen.
That's my problem. I see. I got you talking about my problems after all.
What the heck?
All right, let's talk about bias. We're not talking about problems like mental problems or sunburn problems. We're talking about problems with your sampling and problem with your statistics.
Yeah. So we had actually mentioned the word bias and a bunch of these now just to start kind of prepping you for this concept of bias. So we say that bias occurs when certain responses are systematically favored over others. So here's an example. And it's happened every single year that I've been teaching. Students will say, so-and-so teacher favors girls. They always make better grades than the boys do. Well, if that were true, that would be a kind of bias because that teacher would be systematically choosing females to make a better grade, right? Gender bias.
And often in mathematics or statistics, the definition of the word or the word relates to what it does. I mean, we all know about bias in the real world. It's obvious, we experience it in lots of ways. But we're talking about statistical bias where we're favoring different parts of the population, or we're just doing something that might cause a problem with our statistics.
So I'm going to do a thing that I don't always do, which is I think now is a good time for you to pause the video and actually physically write these definitions down. Not necessarily because, it's important that you memorize this, but because it will get you thinking as you're writing the definitions, it will get you thinking about how could these things happen, right? And we're going to show you an example of how some of these can happen. But guys, it's less important that you know like which one is undercoverage, which one is non-response. I mean, we do want you to know those words, but we want you to know by being that kind of bias, where's the potential harm in the study? Like, is it going to overestimate or underestimate whatever it is that you're talking about?
So let's do it. Let's experiment. Let's look at some data.
Go, Mr. Bobby. Go.
All right. This is one of my favorite examples too, and you see this a lot. Every college advertises that they're how successful their graduates are, or at least they claim to be. And so we want to look at how legitimate is it when they give you these statistics.
Right.
Okay.
And guys, whatever colleges that you're considering right now, you can actually go on Fayetteville's website. I know what y'all are thinking. Fayetteville's website.
I'm going to be a doctor. Wait, sorry.
Stop. They're all going to be doctors. No, they're not going to be statisticians. Okay. Anyways, and you can actually look up this information. Remember when I put this little thing in the bottom, that means I stole this from Skew the Script. We stole a lot of this unit from them because they had a really brilliant
some great examples. All right, let's look at this college. So I'm not. This is an actual college, I assume. I didn't research this one. But they offer community colleges often offer a 2-year degree, and the good outcome from a 2-year community college would be that you get your 2-year degree or a certificate, and then transfer to a 4-year institution, or you go and get a job in that field.
Right.
Okay. So we're looking at that's good. We like those 3 things.
The things we don't like are don't drop out of college. That's it. That's what we don't like.
You pay there, you go for a year, and then you waste your money. Okay. So this college happened to have on their webpage and boasted that they had an overall graduation placement rate of 98.5%, with 91% working in their field of study. Boy, if I saw that, I'd be signing up. Give me a application. I'm on my way. I'm going to go make me some money.
So I'm going to tell you guys that when you see statistics anywhere, like this is an example, you should just automatically question them. Like just by nature, you should be like, really? And think about exactly what are they giving you? Exactly what am I reading right now? Because those wishy-washy words or words not in the paragraph, those are important.
Yeah, I taught at community college. It ain't that high.
Yeah. So our best guess of what this means, what they're telling us, is that 98.5% of graduates transfer or get full-time work.
I'm getting suspicious now.
I hope you're getting suspicious. So they told us overall graduation placement. This graduation word is really important because we're only going to be talking about those graduates of the university. So now what do you wonder, Mr. Bobby?
I wonder how many people graduated.
Ooh, okay. So what does this look like?
It looks like you have a whole bunch of people and you're only picking out, what, 6 of them?
We have this whole population of every student that begins school at this Tennessee 2-year college, right? We're going to pick out a sample of all those students, and the sample is going to look like only the graduates. So we should begin to question how many students didn't successfully graduate or how many students transferred out of the 2-year college. And to be clear, like, that's a great statistic, like that they're boasting. Like, it is awesome that if you graduate from this college that they have such a good outcome, right?
Right.
So by law, most college graduation or transfer rate data is publicly accessible. So if you're wanting again to look at the university you're considering, this would be a good place to go to look up a little data about that.
This is one that they may not tell you if it's not very good. I mean, I know that, I don't know if this happened to you, but when freshman orientation said, look at the person on the left, look at the person on the right, one of the 3 of you ain't gonna make it. They said in my orientation. And
it's real bad, real bad. Okay, so within 8 years, this is kind of what it looked like. About 27% of their students received a certificate within 8 years, received an associate's degree within 8 years, enrolled at the same institution, or enrolled at a different institution. Okay? So what does that mean?
Within 8 years of starting or over 8 years of collecting data? That's my question for you now.
I believe that it is within 8 years of when they began.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Yeah. We would assume that a high proportion of these students probably had a good job or high outcome. So I'm still like, if I'm not careful, I'm still feeling good about this college in terms of like these big, high, great numbers. But the problem is that we know nothing now about the other 73% because we only know about graduates or people who transferred, right? Mm-hmm. Then we don't know anything about the other 73%, which is a huge chunk of their population.
That's what she said. So what she's saying is 98.5% of the 27%
right
are working in their field or transferred. But that is even 98.5% of 27% is still like 25% or whatever.
Yeah.
All those other people we don't know about, and that's not good enough.
That's a lot of people we don't know about.
That's a lot of people we don't know about, yes.
Okay, so we might call this BS. Not bad statistics because it's not right. It is correct.
What they're saying is correct, but
it's just misleading.
Yeah, we don't necessarily always pay attention to those little words like graduates.
Right. And we really want to not mislead people. I mean, okay, that's true. I really want to not mislead people, but a lot of people out there want to mislead you.
I was going to correct you on that if you didn't correct yourself.
Yeah, they want to mislead you. You have to be smarter than they are. Okay, so if a bias is a study flaw that leads to an underrepresentative or inaccurate estimates, we might call what just happened there undercoverage.
Now, granted, there are people who will deliberately try to mislead you. And that's not what we're talking about. We're trying to talk about designing an experiment, being aware of potential biases and trying to minimize them. There's always going to be some errors in our data collection or something that we can't necessarily gather. But we want to be able to represent different parts of the population.
Right. And to be clear, that actually is an important statistic. It's the statistic I would use if I worked for the college to talk to the students who are struggling. Like, guys, if you can just make it to the end of this program, 99% of you will end up with a job or like an opportunity.
Yeah.
Right. So it is informative. It's just who's the audience, right? Well, I would call this undercoverage because our audience should be all students, but we did not talk about all students. And that's the problem. Okay, so Oklahoma, we're changing.
Okay, going to a different school now.
Go.
Okay, so recently Rogers College found that 75% of graduates were pursuing a degree or found full-time employment by their final semester. So how do you think they might have got this data? Where do they gather this data from? Well, let's see. From surveys. It's very common. I know that I get emails. You probably get emails from your university asking you to fill it out. How often do you fill out those surveys? Never. Okay. But they also, in their survey, only had a 20% response rate. I wonder who fills those surveys out besides my wife. My wife always fills those out. She
loves statistics, though.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, I mean, like, you went to Rogers College, or suppose you went there, and you get a survey from that. You had a great experience. You were all in. You got a good job, and they send you a survey. Are you going to fill it out? You might be more inclined to fill it out than if you had a really rough experience and you got beat up by the football team, and you graduated and you ended up working at Walmart. Since we're talking about Walmart, we've been talking about Walmart.
There are good jobs at Walmart, guys.
Jobs at Walmart, just as long as you're not a woman. Oh, wait a second. Did I just say that out loud? Okay.
So, and to be clear, we don't know which way the bias could go, because what you might find is the people that fill out the survey are the angry people.
Yeah, you don't necessarily know, but you can't, when it's optional and you only get a small percentage, often, well, like TV polls, you'll see they'll poll people. Angry people tend to fill them out more than satisfied people sometimes. So
the fact that there was only 20% of response in this is called non-response bias, meaning like it was optional and not very many people filled it out. So how accurate is it going to be if not very many people filled it out?
And when you're asked to develop a response to one of these, or if this is an AP, I think you have this coming up.
Yeah.
You need to talk about, make a decision and make up a story. Even, I mean, you can't be wrong if you make a decision and defend it.
And that's what I was just saying. Like Mr. Bobby's explanation was, all the successful people want people to know they're successful. So they're filling out the survey saying, look at my success. Completely reasonable, right?
Right.
But you could also have these people that are like, I didn't get a good job. My friend didn't get a good job. I don't think people should go to this college. I'm filling out this survey and telling everybody, right? Yeah. So if your argument was that direction and it's logical, then that is as correct as Mr. Bobby's argument.
Yep. And there's only way that, I mean, in these hypothetical situations, we want you to make a decision and defend it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So that's where we're talking. We kind of got ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, okay. We do that all the time.
We're saying here, write about the population in the sample, explain how it would cause a difference and whether it causes an over and underestimate. And you have the freedom to make up your story, but it has to be in context and it has to have the direction in it.
Right. So these 3 things are important when we're asking you to write about bias. So now would be a good time to pause and take notes.
Okay.
So how could bias in the sampling method have affected the estimate? Well, you're going to identify the sample or the population. So in this case, the population is all graduates of Rogers State University. The sample is graduates who responded to the survey. Why are we Hello Kittying me right now? I'm focused on stats.
Okay. I just thought I'd make a laugh.
Okay, so our population is all the graduates. Our sample is only the people who are responding. So remember, I'm going to back up for just a second. I have to identify the population and I have to identify the sample. Okay, I have to identify both of those people. So that's what we've just done, is we've said population, all the graduates, not all the students, but all the graduates. So be careful, read it, make sure you know what you're talking about. Okay, then of all those graduates, they surveyed them. They only got 20% back. So our sample is at 20%, the survey respondents. Okay. So then a direction. Graduates without jobs probably respond less often, right? Which is what Mr. Bobby said.
But you could have used her example and it would have been fine.
Right.
Make a decision and defend it.
Right.
Okay.
So it should sound something like this. Graduates who didn't find post-grad employment may be ashamed, making them less likely to respond to the survey. Therefore, the sampling method may include a lower proportion of unemployed graduates than a full population. This produces an overestimate of the true percentage of all graduates who are actually starting full-time work. So this is, we haven't talked about this yet, this overestimate, meaning that like, I think the percentage is high because I've left out all of these low people. Therefore, it's an overestimate because I've taken all the low people out, making the average come up.
And if Ms. Young's example had been the case you went with, then it would be lower, or an underestimate of the true percentage, because the happy people just didn't fill out the survey and the angry people shook their fist like a grumpy old man.
Right. And so those angry people would drag the average down and there'd be no top end, right? Or there'd be very few top end.
And that's fine. Either one of those would have been fine.
Yeah. Okay, so we have undercoverage bias, we have non-response bias. Those are the two we've talked about so far. So now we want to talk about voluntary response bias. So this is when a sample is composed of volunteers who may differ from individuals who don't choose to volunteer. And so you're going to find that like some of these feel similar, and it's because they are similar.
There's fine lines, yes. Okay.
So you want to talk through this example?
So in other words, as opposed to getting a survey and just trashing it, this is the one I was kind of talking about, where I would go online, I'd see a story, and I would choose to opt into the survey.
Right.
Or like Miss Young, these maniacs who like to run when it's 90 degrees. If there were somebody wanting to do a heart rate study for exercise, she'd be all over it. She'd be like, ooh, me, and I'd be like,
yeah, only because I have that thing.
So, and I probably, even though I walk my dogs, I don't run and I don't exercise like she does. So I'd probably be less likely. So we may have healthier participants in our study than if we don't.
So the difference here is in the non-response bias, I actually sent it to everybody. Right? In the voluntary response bias, I might have put the survey up on the website. Right?
Yep.
So I'm not necessarily sending it out or trying to capture. And then there's all kinds of problems with this too. All the problems. And you have to do the exact same thing when you talk about bias, where you have to population, sample, direction. Okay. All right. So another type of bias is the question wording bias. So
there are whole departments that phrase, and like at companies and stuff, that worry about the phrasing of a question. When I used to work for Texas Instruments, they would actually run their surveys and their questions through statisticians to make sure that the wording wasn't favoring one result or the other. Because if you read the question here about Guy Fieri, apparently he's the most talented, funny, and the mayor of Flavortown. He's like rocking it. And then this other dude, the boring old Alton Brown. The question itself tells you how to answer it. And this is a very extreme example, but just one little word in phrase can change your opinion. You don't even realize it. There are words that are hot words for like.
And you guys do this to each other actually when you're talking about stuff like, you know, when you're talking about a food you like, you know, oh my gosh, I love Chick-fil-A. Don't you love Chick-fil-A? Like, what kind of answer do you think you're going to get when you know, say something like that? Much more positive, right? Where if you were like, ugh, I hate Chick-fil-A. Do you hate Chick-fil-A? Like, you're swaying your friend's responses by putting your own emotion into it.
All right. And then the next one below that is self-reported bias, where people you ask someone a question and then they report. Here's an example. Like, I literally at one point in my life, I used to be able to bench press almost 350 pounds, or maybe I did somewhere in that range. I could lie and tell you I could do that now. I can't do that now, but I would, if you asked me, I would overestimate probably how strong I am. I might underestimate how much I weigh, or I'm underestimate.
I was going to say that, like, I would almost guarantee you that if you were to poll a bunch of women or men, maybe less men actually, because some men, like, you know, say they weigh a little more because they're little scrawny things. So it's the rare woman that will bump themselves up, though.
When you're asking people to respond, or when you're you're not actually measuring something directly, you might get reporting errors, or people just not telling you the full truth,
or they just don't know. I haven't weighed myself since the beginning of the isolation.
Well,
so probably what I give you a number, but I don't know if it's right.
If you ask me how many dogs I have, I might tell you less than I actually have, because otherwise, if you knew how many dogs I actually had, you might think I was crazy.
You don't have that many right now, do you? 1, 2, 3, 4. You have 5 dogs right now?
No, you missed the 2 that I just got.
Oh.
Yeah, even 5 was crazy.
I did forget you got those 2 dogs.
Yeah. Well, you have 3, and at least I'm in.
Yeah. Okay. Well. Anyways, so those are your bias. Again, what you call them. I mean, they have names. What you call them, like, you know, that's important, but not as important as realizing, like, what potentially you know could be happening. Like in this question wording bias, you're going to get an overestimate of people who like Guy Fieri. Like, you're going to. Because you just said he was talented and funny. Like, of course you are. And the self-reported bias, well, that just depends on what you ask, right? Because if you ask about women's weight, you're probably going to get an underestimate of the actual sample. So just think about population, think about sample, and think about over-underestimate, okay? So you're going to do 3 things. You got 1 Khan Academy to work on. You're going to go ahead and finish up the Unit 3 multiple choice questions A in AP Classroom. And then there will be a quiz ready for you to start, 3-1 through 3-4 quiz that is linked. Okay? Bye, you guys. It was super hanging out with you today. I'll see you on the next one.